G. We're thinking of a song. G. There's a lot of G's. Let's see. Glorious. Give me Jesus. Glorify. Go tell it on the mountain. No, God be. God is so good. God of our Father. God so loved the world, He gave His only Son. Fun song. Oh. Great is thy faithfulness. That's a grand song. Well, number 502, right across the page from where we were singing 503, is pretty good too.
Teaching elementary school, my first year in Maine, I kid you not, they wanted to sing it every day.
I have a song that Jesus gave me. It was sent from heaven above. There never was a sweeter melody. 'Tis the melody of love. In my heart there rings a melody. There rings a melody with heaven's harmony. In my heart there rings a melody. There rings a melody of love. Okay, here's where the invisible fermata goes. Right before the refrain. I won't do it.
I'm so sorry, I'm in elementary school mode. You know, we go fast.
Oh, they go fast. Ah, yeah, we got to slow it down for the wind up and the punch, you know. I love the Christ who died on Calvary, for He washed my sins away. He put within my heart a melody, and I know it's there to stay. In my heart there rings a melody. There rings a melody with heaven's harmony. In my heart there rings a melody. There rings a melody of love. They've got an obligato going on over there. Where did I hear it? I heard it. It's kind of an obligato thing, a counter rhythm. 'Twill be my endless theme in glory. With the angels I will sing. 'Twill be a song with glorious harmony when the courts of heaven ring. In my heart there rings a melody. There rings a melody with heaven's harmony. In my heart there rings a melody. There rings a melody of love. Now we're going to sing a scripture song. Isaiah, turn in your hymn to Isaiah chapter 8, verse 20. No, just a song. Let me turn your mic on. To the law and to the testimony. And you all know this verse. Well-known verse. To the law and to the testimony. If they speak not according to their word, this word is because of no light.
To the law and to the testimony, if they speak not according to this word. If they speak not according to this word, it's because there's no light in them. To the law and to the testimony, if they speak not according to this word. If they speak not according to this word, it's because there's no light in them.
Short and sweet. You want to do that again? Oh, let's do it again. Okay, here we go.
To the law and to the testimony, if they speak not according to this word. If they speak not according to this word, it's because there's no light in them. To the law and to the testimony, if they speak not according to this word. If they speak not according to this word, it's because there's no light in them.
Okay. We got the theme song coming up. Here we go.
Come and let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, of the Lord. Come and let us go up to the house of the God of Jacob. And he will teach us his ways, and we will walk in his paths. For the law shall go forth out of Zion, and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. Come and let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, of the Lord. Come and let us go up to the house of the God of Jacob. And he will teach us his ways, and we will walk in his paths. For the law shall go forth out of Zion, and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem.
Is this part 2 or part 3 now? Part 2 of your testimony. Or did you want to go into covenants? And we'll bridge that in as well. Okay, come up, Brother Abraham. We're ready. Eager.
Okay. I know I miss a lot of things, but I don't want to be too detailed. But I have thought of things that I might bring up that I wanted to share. Anyway, I'd like to I want to be a blessing to everyone that hears it. So anyway, I'd like to finish kind of our life testimony and then get into the covenants briefly. So can you pray for me again?
Gracious Heavenly Father, it's a privilege to gather in your name, Father, to ask for your blessing, to ask for your Spirit, that Father, that makes us righteous, that helps us to hear the sound of that still small voice, Father. And I thank you, Father, for this privilege that we have to just listen to what you have to share through our brother Abraham. Quicken his mind, Father, give him clarity of thought, open our ears to hear this. And I also just have a prayer request, Father, for our brother Ray DeLong. It sounds like there's still complications with his health, that appear to be severe or serious at this point. And we're asking, Father, for you to intervene, Father, for your healing hands to be placed upon him. And regardless that, Father, he would just be in a place where he has the assurance, Father, to spend eternity with you and your Son. Be with us now. We thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Okay, where I left off was, I guess, when we had to move out of our community. And so anyway, that we had thoughts of moving several years before then, but then we couldn't see anywhere that we wanted to go. We looked at different areas and ideas, but just nothing seemed to be right. And so we pretty much settled down and figured we would stay there and as long as we can. But then all of a sudden we had to move out of the community, which it brought more challenges in a way. Well, for one, we had to look for cheap rent farmland with a house on it, livable. And so anyway, we put our feelers out, and we had a lot of Seventh-day Adventist friends by then, and of course the word spread. And so from January 5, 2005 to April, the new owner asked us to be off by June 1. But we wanted to be off earlier to start crops. And so we were looking and praying. And anyway, in the meantime, I guess Cindy Watson, many of you may not know her, she was a little lady with a big heart, and she was living in California, and she heard about our need, and she had just recently bought a place in Williamsport, Tennessee, next to the Dysingers, the Dysinger families, who were organic farmers. And so when Cindy heard our need, she said, "You can move into my house." The Dysingers had built the house and sold it to Cindy. And so when she heard our need, she said, "You can live there, free rent for a time." And then we rented land from the Dysingers across the road. And so that was, God provided for 2 years right there, almost 2 years. And then Cindy couldn't manage all the expenses she had there, and so she decided to sell it. And then we had to move again. So again, I mean, a lot of people might have these feelings, but it's okay if we can trust God to take care of us. We're just pilgrims on this earth. So anyway, again, looking for land, for a place to live. And then we thought we have something that would work. A lady had bought a place in a Mennonite community over in Lobelville, Tennessee, and she wanted somebody to farm it. And so we thought we had a deal written up and everything, and then we moved over there on February 28, 2007, and pretty soon we realized that she wants to change things about rent and everything, and so pretty soon we saw that we cannot stay there. And so the Mennonite community there found out about our need, and they had an empty place, and so they offered it to us. And so we moved over there about 5 or so miles. And yes, yeah, they are more open than some are, in a way. Anyway, they let us live there, and then that's where the flood came. So April 23, 2007, we moved over there, and we lived there for a little more than 3 years. But in May 2, 2010 is when the flood came. That's when about an average of 20 inches of rain fell in about 24 hours in Nashville and southwest toward us. And so all the water got high. And so anyway, that area, that valley has had a number of floods, but hardly ever this bad. I mean, some say maybe many years ago. But anyway, this was, David Clayton and Howard Williams were in that area having meetings at that time on Sabbath. And we were there in Lobelville. And then it rained a lot that day. And that night when we came home, the creek was high. But we didn't realize what is coming. And the next morning, the creek was too high to cross. I used to go across, the barn was across the creek, a smaller creek. And so anyway, we ate breakfast and we thought the water would go down any time. But it kept raining and the water kept coming up very fast. And after breakfast, we started, things started floating away outside. And so we started gathering things up and trying to take it to higher ground. And I thought the horses are okay. They were in the barn. And I had no idea how high the water would get. And I left them in the barn. I should not have. But I thought I was afraid if I let them out, they would try to get across the creek and wash away. But they would have probably been smart enough not to. But anyway, as the water rose, I was not able to get over there anymore. And so anyway, by the time that the water came into the floor, Mattie was ready to leave. She said, "It is time to go." And so she quickly grabbed things and put it up on so it doesn't get wet. Well, everything got wet. We left through about this deep water, just pushing. And through the fields and over to the neighbors first, neighboring house, a trailer house. And the neighbors were not very friendly. They didn't invite us in. They let us sit on the porch. But after a while, we were wet and cold. And so we decided to go over to the mine, the cave. It's like a lime quarry into the side of a hill, like 2 big caves. So we went in there. And I went back to the neighbor. I saw the water just keeps rising, and I warned them before we left the porch that they need to get out because it just keeps rising. And I went over there again, and the third time, I think the water was about knee deep. The third time I went over there in their yard, and I said, "It is time to get out. This is just getting higher." And they said, "Well, it has never gotten any higher. It's okay. And then, not long after that, I went back, and I also went back and forth to down the road a little bit to look at our buildings. And one time I saw our buggy floating out of the barn. And then later I saw the house was moved. It was in the trees. And later, of course, it was all demolished. But it was like a river. The waves were going. The whole farm was underwater. Almost the whole farm. And it was about this deep where the house was standing. And anyway, this was all very agonizing to me. And I don't quite remember, I think the house left before I warned the neighbor the last time. And then I went back to the cave and just sat there agonizing. And all of a sudden, the children, and we all heard something. We thought there's a cow drowning or something. And so we listened, and pretty soon we heard it's a human voice. And so I ran over there. I ran to their trailer, and I hollered, and he hollered back. I'd say, "Where are you?" And I couldn't see anybody. And pretty soon I realized that the voice is coming from the tree line. It was their fence line. And so I came back to the fence line, and I waded into the water. And it was, where he was, it was this deep. But he was, and I couldn't see him until I was about 15 feet close to him. And we would communicate back and forth, hollering. And then when I saw him there, he was hanging on a little tree with one hand, and he was like this. And so I went and got a hold of his hand, and I said, "Come, let's get out of here." And he did not let go of the tree. And so I said it again once or twice, and finally he said, "I'm holding on to my wife." And so I realized that she's down there, and I knew she's already drowned because of all the time that went by. And so I told him, "You have to let go so I can get you out." And so he let go, and we came along the tree line holding on to little trees to wade on out. But anyway, I don't want to take too much detail, but because of this flood, I mean, it was very devastating. We lost a lot of stuff. But in the meantime, we gained a lot. And it just was like it fell from heaven. When there were two men that were very instrumental in raising money for us, and they were Seventh-day Adventist men, friends of ours, Don Blaylock and Daniel Feenoff. And they decided to ask for donations to help us buy land because we didn't have money to buy land. And so the money came it came. And so we were able to look for land, and that was again another hassle of looking for a place. But we looked at, somebody here said they looked at 57 places before they got one. We looked at 51 or 52. And then when this certain place came up, it looked suitable. And every other place that we looked at was either flood land or cherty hills, steep hills and chert. So anyway, as a family, we were praying about this, where to go. And I mean, we considered everywhere, even Alaska or Belize or wherever. And so when our family saw this place, we were all like, this is it. And so I have ever since, I mean, we've had a lot of struggles there on that place, but I cannot deny that God did not lead us there just because we've had struggles. But anyway, it was just a miracle from heaven. I'd like to talk a little bit about my health problems in my life, and it's not that important except that we know that God wants us to have good health, but sometimes He has to allow hardships for us to grow and to come closer to Him. So that is what I have to believe why some people go through a lot more struggles than others. I don't know. But anyway, my health problems, I was born weak. Like my next younger brother, he was born very tough, and he's always tough, and he can eat anything he wants and smoke and whatever. He's tough. Anyway, I was always having health problems, especially allergy problems, and I had severe earaches throughout my young life and through my teens, up to my upper teens. And I guess through my earache I found the Sabbath, maybe. You know what I said? Anyway, my health problems caused me to seek for some remedies. And so because of that, I changed my diet. I put animal products out. I discovered that I'm allergic to milk and eggs. And so I totally put animal products out of my diet. And that seemed to maybe stabilize my health. I was, going back to my age of 14, a nature doctor discovered that I have a damaged valve in the heart by stethoscope. And so that was always on my mind. I thought someday I might just have a heart attack and die. But by that time I was spiritually ready to die. I didn't fear death. But I dreaded separating from the family and what they would go through, that I would all of a sudden die. I mean, I had funny feelings. I thought about writing a note that I might die, things like that. But I never got it done. Anyway, by age 17, in the fall of that year, I don't remember what year that was, 1988. That was the year I met Mattie. But just near that time, and I know some people say, well, stress makes you poor health, and I know it does, but I was happy at that time. But my health was going downhill, and I did not understand, except that maybe it's my heart. But I started having a hard time getting a deep breath. This started at age 17, but I was in romance and happy, and yet my health was going downhill. And by the age of 18, about a year later, after my breathing started bothering me, my energy started just going down, down, down. And I could not perform the work anymore like I used to. I couldn't continue with the threshing crews and the frolics and everything, and the hauling manure and things like that. And it really was humbling. We we as a family used to make fun of some people who we thought are puny, and I don't know all the words in English, but anyway, this really humbled me where I am now in that state. I couldn't perform the work anymore that I used to do. And so anyway, this helped me to have long suffering and sorrow for people who have poor health problems. And I was pretty, I don't know how else to explain this except that if you're in a church system where everything is just normal, and if you have to step out and be different, it is really humbling. It can be really humbling. So my diet change was also humbling to me, because now I was different and I was looked down upon. And I knew that. Most people didn't make fun of me or say anything much, but I knew the feelings. And so anyway, I think that helped me to step out and be different. And anyway, I was planning. My mother used to say, your wife, when you get married, she will not put up with your different diet. And so I was like, okay, I'll give it up. I'll just eat the best I can, and I'll give it up. I didn't say anything to Mattie about my diet. And when we got published to be married, which that's normal in the Amish churches, you get published to be married about 2 weeks before the wedding. And so the boy stays in the girls' home most of the time after they are published. And so I ate there, and then I guess before then I told Mattie that I eat a little bit different, but I wasn't going to ask her to cook different for me. But she wanted to. And I was surprised. Even before we were married, in her home, she made sure I have the food I want. And that was very impressive to me. And even before we got married, I told her that, she was kind of like, why don't we get married this spring? And I was like, I'm in poor health and I'm not 21 yet. I have decided I want to wait until I'm 21. And she was like, I'd like to get married and take care of you. And so anyway, we got married that fall in September, on September 22, 1992. And I was just so overwhelmed with the way she wanted to take care of me. Like, she nurtured me to better health. And I was willing to give up my diet, but she didn't want me to. She wanted to make sure I get better. And so she herself moved with me in diet without me pushing. And it was just so amazing to me. Anyway, I'm going to say this, that just becoming vegan did not help me much. It did kind of stabilize and help my allergy problems, but after we got married, I got even worse, and I was happier than ever before. And we went through a real trial about 6 months after we were married. A nature doctor figured with all he's tried, with all I've tried, I might have cancer. And so he took a blood test. And during that time, we were preparing that I would die. And I was like, I'm ready to die. I've suffered enough. And when he told me that I might have cancer, I was selfish. I didn't think how hard it was on my wife. And she was, in our first year or so, she would go home to her home one day each week. And she was at her home, the day that this nature doctor was at our house and said, it's a possibility that you have cancer. And so when she came home, I came out to unhitch the horse, and I smiled, and I said I might have cancer. And she started crying. And she said, "Don't you laugh."
Okay, there.
Anyway, is it okay?
It's on. Is it? Can you guys hear? Yeah, it's on.
Okay. Anyway, I'm just sharing this to share some things about experience in our married life, and anyway, we have also gone through struggles in the last years, and I'm just going to say this, that in a marriage, in a proper marriage, we are one flesh. And it is, I think last week I found that we were digging sweet potatoes, and I found two sweet potatoes grown into each other. And I pulled on it and until I broke a piece. And I don't know why I did it, but then I thought about, wow, this is a perfect illustration of two hearts growing together in a marriage. And if we go through severe struggles, then it feels like our hearts are torn apart, and it hurts terribly. So anyway, I'm just sharing this, that love feels wonderful. If we have any friction, it feels terrible. It feels like, I don't know, worse than death. I don't know. But that's the only way I know how to describe it. But anyway, he took a blood test and came back about a week later and said it doesn't show. So that was a great relief. Don't laugh because it was hard on her. I wasn't laughing at her. I was just happy that I'm going to be over with suffering. But anyway, well, then she got me interested in trying another nature doctor, who he got me to use a lot of supplements. And so I regained some health. I have to say, for 5 years, I had a hard time getting a deep breath. And so I went downhill for 5 years. And then when I went to this other nature doctor, he gave me a lot of supplements. And we spent a lot of money on that. But I came out part ways. And then kind of leveled off again. And then I developed even a worse allergy problem, a fall allergy problem that just drained me. I mean, I was almost sick for a few months until the frost came and killed something. I don't know what it was. But I went through this for 5 years. And I finally said, I have to do something different. And so at that time, we had heard of another nature doctor who did a lot of curing with raw food and juicing, and of course supplements too. He had a lot of good results. And so I said, I'm willing to try it. And I slowly ate more raw food. And we did some juicing, and my health improved tremendously. And I felt so great. I was 34 by now. And I told Mattie many times, I feel like I'm 17 again. And I'm addicted to raw food, if you say that. I have lost my crave for cooked food. Sometimes when we're away, I will eat a piece of bread or something because there's not much variety, but it doesn't taste like raw food. I have lost the taste for cooked food. And anyway, I realized that raw food is not perfect either because of sin and depletion of the soil and everything. So that we cannot have a perfect diet on this earth. But anyway, I have had a lot of benefits, yet at age 40, for 6 years I felt very young again. And then at age 40, I started feeling more health-like, easier, tired, and I don't know. I don't like it, but it's a fact. Anyway, I would really like to share a little bit about what I have found in the covenants. And I thought I understood it way back when we started keeping the Sabbath, that the covenants are not limited to a time period. You were asking some questions about what I'm talking about. The idea that the covenants are limited to a time period causes a lot of people to think that before the cross, people were not able to be born again. And they were not able to be in the Spirit, filled with the Spirit. And many such things. Grace was limited. Many such things. That idea causes. And so I would just like to briefly share what I have found. And the reason I had to study this, I want to tell you, is because of the feasts and because of the controversy. I acknowledge that Talking Rock had an influence on me, but I think the opposition had more influence on me because it was the very same opposition that the Sabbath opposers used against us, especially Mennonites. They very much use the sayings like, we're not under the law, so we don't have to keep the Sabbath. We're under grace. We have the life of Christ now. We have righteousness by faith. And many such things I have heard from the Mennonites, not so much from the Amish. But when this thing about the feast started, then I heard the same ideas that the Mennonites and many Protestants use against the Sabbath. I heard it now against the holy days. So I would like to just briefly share. If you want to go there, you can, but I have written down the references here, and I just quoted part of the verses to make things shorter and to bring out just the concentrated part. There's in Deuteronomy 5, verse 2 and 3, it says, "The Lord our God made a covenant with us in Horeb. The Lord made not this covenant with our fathers." So many people understand that the old covenant came into existence at Mount Sinai. Well, I don't know about all people, but some people have that understanding. Yeah, I have. Yeah, you can. It's okay. So, anyway, if you go on, when I study the Bible, I have to take the concordance. When I want to do a thorough study, I have to look up every word covenant throughout the whole Bible before I draw a conclusion. And so I'm just bringing out a few that were to me key verses or foundational verses. So anyway, here it says, "The Lord our God made a covenant with us in Horeb. The Lord made not this covenant with our fathers." That's in Deuteronomy 5, 2 and 3. And so now I'd like to look at what that covenant was. And then also I'd like to look at, did it not exist before then? See, it says here that God did not give it to them before this. But it doesn't say that it didn't exist before then in the minds of the people. So in Exodus 19 verse 5, and I just quoted part of the verse, "If ye will obey my voice indeed," and we know what the people answered. I quoted part of Exodus 24, 3, 7, and Exodus 19:8, where the people answered. And all the people answered with one voice and said, "All the words which the Lord hath said will we do and be obedient." Now, if you notice carefully, if you look at it carefully, this is how God gave it to them. He said, "If you will obey my voice, I will do this." And so their answer is, "We will." If they would have realized and understood that we can of our own self do nothing, then they would have said, "We cannot," or "You must do it through us." We cannot. But rather their answer was, "We will." So the focus, the promise of the old covenant is based on man's promise. If you study it carefully, you will see that. And then, anyway, this is, I just wrote here, this is called the first or old covenant, which was not faultless This is from Hebrews 8, 6-9. This covenant, the first or the old covenant, was not faultless. And he said, for finding fault with them, with the people, not with God, but with the people, because they continued not in my covenant, and I regarded them not. So we see that the old covenant is based on man's effort and promise, or promise and effort. We can see it in Cain and Abel, the attitude of Cain and Abel. If we look carefully, we can see it in people. But the real thing that helped me to understand that it is experiential in the lives of every individual throughout the whole history of mankind is Galatians chapter 4. And whoever has this one, if you go to the middle of the booklet, I have a list here what this chapter puts under. Paul uses, I'm just going to read from about the middle of the page where I said, Paul makes it clear in Galatians 4, 21-31 that the nature or experience in the two covenants is not limited to certain periods of time in this world's history. He uses Abraham's two sons as an allegory to describe man's sinful nature and experience in the first birth, and his spiritual nature and experience in the new birth. And he says, these are the two covenants. These are the two covenants. We can ask the question, what are the covenants? And then Paul says here, these are the two covenants. He doesn't say there are many. The Bible doesn't say, I know there are many promises in the everlasting covenant. And that's another thing that helped me is, this is what I have learned. I have found that there are many promises in the everlasting covenant. Not just one, but many. And so many people think there are many covenants, but it is all the everlasting covenant with many promises included in it. And so Paul uses the Ishmael and Isaac as an allegory of the two covenants. Yet he says, he outlines the experience of these two boys. And he says, now we, brethren, as Isaac was, are the children of promise. And if you research the children of promise, you will find that it is those of faith, those that believe God. But as then, he that was born after the flesh persecuted him that was born after the Spirit, even so it is now. Even so it is now. The old covenant experience still exists today. Even so it is now, the same as it was back then. But anyway, I'll just, I picked out these phrases out of this chapter and I lined it. The first or old covenant is under the law. Ishmael was under the law, born by a bondmaid, and he was by works, born after the flesh, from Sinai, the old covenant. God gave them the old covenant at Sinai. That doesn't mean it didn't exist before, because Ishmael and Isaac were, one was in the Old Covenant experience and one in the everlasting or new, or the second, and it was before Sinai. And then Ishmael was in bondage, and earthly Jerusalem describes that, I think, with the system that they were in. And also, Ishmael was the persecutor of Isaac. That's the Old Covenant experience. And he shall not be heir. Then under the second or new or everlasting covenant, we, as Isaac was, are born by a free woman, by promise, born after the Spirit, free. We are free. And we are persecuted, not the persecutor. And we will be heirs. So anyway, that is just a brief, some brief key verses for me in understanding the covenants. And I don't know if I could quickly share some of my struggles with the holy days. Because of the opposition and because of the reasoning that the opposition used to oppose the feasts, I had to really question them. And so I became at first convinced, and then stronger and stronger and stronger was the conviction that I have to say the still small voice was telling me, keep the feast. But I severely struggled, and I argued with it. And I many times I would say, God, take these thoughts away from me if it is not you speaking. And then I would hear again, this is me. It's your Heavenly Father. And so, anyway, this struggle went on for probably a year. And I went through a lot of the same struggles that I did with the Sabbath. Like, what will happen to our family, or what will people think, or there are a lot of whats, questions that come up when we are tested like this. And I used to look down on feast keepers, and I didn't want to become one. My flesh really resisted. And I knew all the ideas against it, and I didn't want to be different again. So anyway, this struggle came on to me so hard that, and I was not even sure about the timing, and I'm still not so sure, but it seems pretty simple to me now. But it was in 2018, on a Sabbath day, the day before Passover, the way I understood it. And I was just terribly struggling with it. I would hear this voice, still small voice, just wooing me to step out. And I was resisting and questioning and struggling until I finally just said, I'm willing, whatever the cost. And so I say, it is a blessing to me, even though I don't understand all the reasons why I should even. I mean, But it was the only way I could free my conscience. And so I get more time now to study the Bible and to write. That's one great blessing. And I do realize that, like in Ezra or Nehemiah, they were reading the law one day, and I used to puzzle over that. It said, "This day is holy." People were weeping. And Ezra or Nehemiah, which one was it? Ezra? He said, "Rejoice, this day is holy." And I used to wonder, why was that day holy? This day is holy to the Lord, it says. And I used to think, well, was it just because they were gathered, they decided to gather, that it's made this day holy to the Lord? And I didn't understand until I realized that the Sabbath is holy because God made it holy. And so if this day is holy, then God had to make it holy. Then I found out by studying that that was the first day of the 7th month. And so, anyway, I have to say that in this life, for me, it was my childhood and then coming to an understanding of salvation by grace through faith. And then it was, will you follow me? Are we willing to follow Christ all the way? We are supposed to be following Him. When we are born again, we make a choice and a commitment to die to self and live for Christ and follow Him. Now, in this following, I have, the best I can understand, I have had to change some doctrinal understanding. I have had to keep the Sabbath, not in order to be saved, but in order to have a free conscience, and to keep following Him. And later, you can say the holy days, whatever we are, whenever something new comes to us, we always have to test it by the Word of God. And then we have to make a decision. Are we willing to follow Christ in another step, which might cause a lot more problem? So it is not a once saved, always saved thing here. It is we are saved by grace through faith, and then we are tested on the way if we will continue to follow Christ. If He shows us new truths, first of all, we must test it by the Word of God. And then we make a choice again, whether we will continue following Him or if we will turn back or some other way. And so this has been my experience, that whatever it is, we are tested again and again. And so I say, sometimes the struggle is very hard, but if we can completely submit our lives into God's hands and not worry about what will happen, then it's okay. If I wouldn't mind answering some questions if anybody has any questions, but I don't know if I should do it here or should I turn this off, which is best for recording. Okay. Does anyone have any questions? 4. Oh, how many? Sorry. I might have to sit down. How many? Yeah, we have 4 children. Yes. Yeah. Only 3 were here. Melinda was, where was she? Yeah, she was somewhere else. I don't remember. No, I'm okay. I just have to remember to repeat the question. Is doing well. Melinda's doing well.
What would you say, Abraham, was the key or something that really helped you through the difficulties in your marriage when you guys had struggles?
The best I can say with marriage struggles, the overcoming. I have to say I spent a lot of time in the woods crying and praying. And then I would get relief. And I could feel the presence of my Heavenly Father. I have from youth felt like I can sit in His lap. I can talk to Him. But we often let things get in our way. And we get terribly discouraged. And then when we can spend time with our Heavenly Father, I mean, I've had experiences where I would lay out in the woods and cry and pray, and then one time I remember I had, I just felt like I'm in my Father's lap. The sun is holding His hands over my head, and the angels are rubbing my body with their wings. That was the feeling I had. Now, I have seen things I wouldn't call it a vision, but I've had experiences during prayer and sometimes dreams that have really helped or encouraged me. And I might share those and some dates also that are very important to me. Anyway, I did say the experience I had about the Sabbath. When that experience came, it was sure. I had no doubt. There was, during a really hard struggle about the holy days, somebody had sent us the complete letter from that Catholic father in Kansas, I think it was, the one who put out a reward for $1,000 whoever could prove from the Bible that Sunday is holy. T. Enright. Somebody had sent us a complete letter, and it includes the festivals. He said the Jewish feast. The Catholic Church not only changed the Sabbath, but all the Jewish feasts. And I never saw that letter incomplete. I always saw it with that bottom end off until somebody sent it to us, and then that was several years before I was really interested in it. And then I got interested in that, and I asked Mattie, where is that letter. And she said she doesn't know. And then I searched, I couldn't find it. I had a dream. That very night, in the dream, I saw where it is, and the next morning I went and I got it. It was right there where I dreamed. That was so precious to me.
That's a fulfillment of Daniel 7:25,
Yeah.
which says, you shall think to change times and law. And the word times there is moedim,
Yes.
appointed times.
Yes. Yes, that's another thing that I have seen. Like, the moon was ordained for, how does it say in Psalm, for the festivals or something like that. And when I saw that, it really caused me to question. And then also the times that the beast, the little horn, thought to change times and laws. When I discovered that that's not only the Sabbath, but all the holy convocations, all the times, set apart times for us to meet with our Heavenly Father. Special meetings, I call it special meetings.
Mikra Kodesh, holy convocation.
Anyway, for the Sabbath, we have had to forsake our community, many friends. I mean, it put something between us and a lot of our friends, but we gained a lot of new friends. And we had to leave our community, our land, and everything was okay, but it was a struggle. And then with the holy days, I was even tested harder. Not in the same way, but in a closer way. Just because of the closeness of the opposition. So, anyway, and I don't, there are some doctrines that are very foundational. For me, the holy days are not very foundational. The covenants are the true understanding of the covenants, the truth about God, the correct understanding of God's law in relation to us, His character. Some of those things are very foundational. Even the immortality of the soul, or the mortality of the soul, is very foundational in understanding God's character. Because, see, that's something we learned before we learned about the Sabbath, that the soul that sinneth, it will die. But I didn't really understand the significance of that in relation to God's character way back then. I still thought God will kill us somehow, like shooting. But when I understood, and that's what I like about John Boskovich's book. I read it and I appreciate it. He's quite clear in my understanding that when we realize the source of our life, then it changes our thinking about ourselves. We somehow, in the flesh, we are deceived to think that we have life in ourselves somehow, and that we can preserve our life. Now, we can shorten our life, we can kill ourselves, we can commit suicide, but we really can't lengthen our life. I mean, that's a hard way to look at it for Seventh-day Adventists, I think, because we always think about living longer, doing things to make us live longer. Well, is God who gives us life. Of course, He gives it to us through food and water and all those things. But without His Spirit, we would fall dead. We would be totally gone. And so we cannot really make our lives longer. But we can stop shortening it so much. I mean, we don't expect to live forever in this body. Any more questions? That's okay. Okay. God bless everybody. Thank you for listening.
Thanks for sharing.
Thank you for sharing your story.
It's always wonderful to hear how God takes care of His children.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well said.
Yep. Okay.